How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Today we're going to discuss a topic that I feel is very important, a topic that came my way through my messenger. And basically there was a gentleman who was approached by an inmate. The inmate asked him to do something that would really be breaking the rules. And the officer was quick to say no. Don't get me wrong. The officer, did what was expected of him, but did they do enough? That's the question. I mean, is no just enough? It's telling the inmate, I'm not going to do it. Is that enough, or should we be doing more? And that's where the dialogue progressed. And I was like, you know what? I think I covered this back a while ago, but I have over 700 something videos right now, so I had trouble finding it. So I asked Connie if she'd be willing to come on. We'll share some personal experiences that we went through when we were probably requested with something that we shouldn't be doing, because we both went through it. And we're going to explain how we felt about it. But we're also going to explain how, yes, we reacted, but we were also prevented in that reaction. Connie, how are you, Connie?
Hi, Connie Alleyne here, founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy, host of the Fly Behind the Wall podcast and Conversations with Connie. I am so looking forward to talking about this because I think there are so many times that we get asked questions and sometimes we dismiss it or we minimize it when we should probably doing a little bit more to make sure it doesn't happen again. So I'm looking forward to see where this goes.
Me too. Again, we know of the idea, but this is not a scripted dialogue. So we're going to I'm going to hear Connie's story for the first time. She's going to hear mine. But the key of this conversation is really not just the reaction, but what have you done to prevent it from happening again to someone else? Also, guys, if you get a chance, please check out Connie's stuff, the podcast. Check out her Civilian Training Academy, because I have a feeling there's a lot of agencies right now that may not be offering training to their civilians. So maybe there's a way to connect with Connie to see if there's a curriculum or something that you guys could partner up with to make sure that the civilians are being given the best training that they can, which obviously helps us as custody maintain safety and security. Now, guys, if you haven't, the show Tier Talks for you, brave men and women that work in corrections. So please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. We're going to go to our sponsor, and when we come back, we will be discussing, what do you do when an inmate asks you to break the rules? Stand by.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it. It's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
Guys, inmate manipulation is a course that is highly needed. It's the process that's so slow moving and subtle that you don't realize it's happening. When inmates choose to manipulate, they manipulate our need to react. Situational awareness and insight is going to save your career. It's going to save you from doing foolish things. Listen to your gut. So the more insight we have, the more we can recognize what isn't so overt, and we can correct our behavior before we fall into a trap that we can't get out of. If you allow an inmate to pull you out of your prescribed role, you are opening up a door for a host of problems. Inmate manipulation, the psychology behind inmate manipulation. Available now. Link in description. All right, and we're back. So let's go with your story first, Connie. So share with us what happened. What did the inmate want you to do?
So at the time I was a discharge planner, and, I would have these encounters with the offenders in the office all the time. I didn't always have an escort officer. Most of the time I met with them, I was alone. And so the inmate came down, and under the guise of trying to reconnect with a family member, the inmate says, "Can I use your phone to call this person?" And of course, I'm like, "No, you can't use my phone." I mean, I think in the moment it was like a no, you can't use my phone, because you know that it's not the right thing to do. But then, of course, he wants to dive into his story, why he wants to use the phone and he can't use the phone. And upstairs, when he's back in the unit, there's issues, blah, blah, blah. I was like, listen, I'm sorry for you, but I can't allow you to use the phone. So, I mean, I think it was enough to say no when I got him out the office, like, and then I let custody know, like, well, listen, this dude is asking me to use the phone. I don't want him back in here. So custody's like, you asked me how to use the fucking phone? Like, you know you can't use the fucking phone. Why would you do that? So here I am thinking. So I think from a civilian perspective, I kind of was like, oh, okay, it was just a phone call. But I think certainly in hindsight, you know, here it was, he was trying to call his baby mother and she had an order of protection against him. And just imagine if I had said yes, I would have been a part of allowing him to violate that order of protection. And I think sometimes we don't realize what we are getting into when it's just this one time, right? Because just the one time becomes another ask because you've already done it for me, right? So I can't imagine, I can't ask you to do it again. So suffice it to say, custody handled him and just him asking me to use the phone. But then my clinic officer came and was like, well, you know, Connie, your phone, like these office phone calls are not monitored. They're not secure lines. And, you know, in the units, those are secured lines and those conversations are recorded. And, you know, he went through the whole security process on the back end, which I didn't know because I was still fairly new. I mean, I was there long enough, but it was really one of the first times I had gotten a request to use my phone. So, you know, I'm thankful that I actually said something to custody because even though I didn't know how big of a deal it was, they did. And so they did go forward and handle him. And I appreciated the education piece that came with it because I simply didn't know. And I'm glad that I didn't do it because who knows what could have came out of me allowing him to use my phone.
Now, there's definitely a lot here to explore. But first thing is your impersonation of custody seems to be just as simple, a lot of curse word. You know what I mean? That's your custody impersonation. Like, you know, hey, I had a good interaction with custody today. I said, how are you? And he said, how the fuck are you? You know what I mean? So you know, I got your impersonations of custody. No, but a couple of things here, if I could explore with the story, and I think you agree, is the request is very simple. They try to take advantage of you as a helping role. You know what your prescribed role is. You know the boundaries. And again, playing that empathetic or trying to get you to draw sympathy, knowing that, well, you're here to help me, so let me see if I can push this in. And technically, even though the request comes off as simple and guys with the fact that, you know, I know you want to help people, so let me push it up a notch, it's great for you to know what that boundary was, because most people, when they're blurred about, you know, that prescribed role of how do I help, because we know you're here to help. We know that, you know, and obviously as us as custody, we know that. But where it gets blurred sometimes is how you help. That's where you have to realize and where the limitations are in how you help. And sometimes when the inmate asks that question, they already know that they can't use that phone call. And I love the fact that you had such an important connection with custody when they were able to tell you, to me, out of all that was, hey, this line isn't secured. You know, and that makes you think like, wow, that makes sense why I can't make that simple phone call. I mean, obviously the court side of it all too, but you know, that to me mattered on a security level, because now it's like the inmate wanted, you were being used as a pawn. The inmate wanted your phone because he knows that phone's not traced. And for custody to come out and not just tell you that, no, they're not allowed to do that, but to sit there and explain why, that to me really makes you, it lasts as long. So if it happens again, you're able to think, oh, I remember last time when someone tried to do it, and these were the things that custody had mentioned. So it goes past the moment. So one thing that we could talk about that leads towards prevention outside of just not giving the person the phone is education. Educating the person as to why that would have easily have crossed the line. And I think that was great, right? Because that lasted with you the moment the dialogue was done, correct?
Yes, I mean, that's the one thing that stuck to me, because now I understood why this was not okay. Aside from, yes, you shouldn't let them use your phone, but now I understood the security implication for them, me allowing someone to use my phone, right? Like when you think about what could that person have been saying, perhaps maybe there's some coded language I might not have even understood. I might have even thought the conversation was meaningless. Meanwhile, there could have been a whole bunch of stuff in that conversation that I just didn't know just because I don't know, you know? So like I had a very great appreciation for one, I think I had a great relationship with the officer. So that was helpful. And I think they knew of my intentions. So when you know people that you work with and you know their intention, it's much easier for you to kind of pull them aside and know that I'm not going to be offended, right? Like, I'm going to be open to the feedback that you're giving me because I actually just don't know. And I think the more that we start to do that, the more that we do have those conversations, and the more that it's not like an attack or like some kind of discipline or something like that that's happening, the more we feel comfortable to just say, hey, listen, this happened. Was I supposed to do that? Was I not supposed to do that? You know, that helps us, I think, as an industry to have a more secure environment, not just this facility. Because then I go work someplace else as an administrator, you cover multiple facilities. If you don't know what's going on in your system, you could be the vulnerability that's going from building to building.
Right. And you know what's funny is you had a good enough relationship with the officers or with your peers to go ahead and ask them for the concern. And also, I like that their answer was more than you'll be fired if you do this. You know, I like the fact that they gave you a foundation to kind of explain why you could lose your job for doing this, because some people are like, oh, you shouldn't have done that, you're going to get fired. And then they kind of walk off. It's like, well, all right, you know, but I haven't learned anything yet. Again, I won't do it, but can you at least tell me why? You know, and I think the fact that they didn't jump to you'll be fired, they told you what would have happened. I think that really matters, especially here. Okay.
I think also too that because they didn't say you don't need to know why, right? Because sometimes there are some security, I guess, limitations or security rules that civilians just don't know. And I get that, you know, we try to protect the security side of things so that, you know, we can identify vulnerabilities quicker, or so that, you know, we can catch people doing stuff. But I think, you know, the fact that it wasn't that you don't need to know, to me was like, oh, okay, so that makes sense. And I was able to talk to other civilians and be like, oh, make sure you're not letting nobody use your phone, right? Like, aside from it being against the rules, here's why they would want to use your phone. And I don't know that we were doing a lot of that back then.
Okay, so the first part we discussed is we have the one part of the preventive side, which is education, why you shouldn't do this, right? So let me share my story real quick, where I wasn't the first one asked. By the way, this inmate was just kind of shopping for staff and asked me if I could make a phone call for them on the outside. So I wasn't the first person that was asked this. Also, the officer next to me was also asked that. And the reason why I know that is because we are in constant communication. You know, the inmate is trying to control the dialogue, but say, Gangi, if I ask you something, can you not tell anybody? To, no, right off the bat, there's no secrets, no level of confidential between us. I'm going to go ahead and it's going to be shared, especially if it's a security concern. So right off the bat, making that inmate know that I knew that you didn't just ask me, but you also asked this officer, and this officer, that starts to make them it makes them hesitant, because they're starting to kind of realize that you can't trust us technically from that perspective. Like, you're coming up thinking that we're going to have this private dialogue, and we're not. I'm going to go ahead and share it with my peers. So right now, I know that I'm not the only person you asked. I know that you asked multiple other officers for this request. So one thing is that dialogue and letting the inmates see that you're connected with your peers just by saying that. Like, after they tell you, it's like, oh yeah, isn't that what you asked such and such yesterday? And didn't you ask that from such and such? All of a sudden, they start to realize, like, whoa, this is really getting around the compound. But the other part I want to put to it is that you got to write them. And the reason why you got to write them, even if they come off like it's a joke, Gangi, I know you would never make a phone call for me, or the act of desperation because you're in that helping role. I say scarlet letter, but it's the truth. You know, people got to know that this is what this inmate does. You know, you gotta label that inmate, because maybe I'm able to do the right thing, but what have I done to protect other individuals from it happening to them? You know, from other custody members to civilian members, we need to make it known that this is what this inmate does. So one thing is we have the connection with the peers, and we're sharing the story out there, right? We're telling the story. But if you want to get it to a more wider level, because I may not be able to talk to everyone, you write the inmate up and let the inmate go through the process. Now, even if the inmate beats the charge, I'm not worried about the outcome of the charge. The fact is, there's a process. The inmate went through the process. Maybe eventually they'll be like, you know what? he'll or she will wind up getting found guilty of the charge. But I'm not too much worried about the outcome. I just want to let the inmate know that we're not tolerating that. You know, that, oh, you just asked me that, I'm writing it. Now, if they beat it or not, I don't care. The point is it showed that you're not that person for them to go to. And that's what hopefully should stop that one inmate from asking you to do it again. And I also like to think that word around will stop other inmates from asking you. Now, one last thing also. Well, first, let's talk about that. What do you agree about? You agree that they're definitely, you like the communication, the scarlet letter?
So I think the communication is awesome. But what I also really appreciated that you mentioned was, you know, there's a process, right? And so I think that the more that we're consistent with the process is the more like that process can serve as a deterrent, because the consistency now brings forth the discussion that, oh, I can't ask because look at what they do every time. Every time I do this, this is what happens. And so, like you said, it's really not a matter of whether the charges are going to stick, but where there's smoke, there's fire, right? And so if you consistently go through this process, it's now going to raise the awareness that this is something that you do. So even if we don't actually have a scarlet letter to put on you, you're putting it on yourself, because we are consistently dealing with this issue, going through the process every time.
Yeah, I love that too, how you just said that, where even though I'm not able to put it on you, you are putting it on yourself. And now there's one more part of this before we come to a close, guys. We're going to try to start keeping shows within a half an hour just to give you that quick bit of information, then you can run off on it. But we still, once in a while, when it's, you know, a good dialogue, me, Connie, the rest of the crew, we may just decide just to let's do it. Because sometimes this isn't work for us. This is something we enjoy doing. So it becomes work when we have to limit the dialogue, believe it or not, as opposed to just seeing where it goes. But I did have some bullets here, and there's one more part I want to cover that I thought was important, is how you view yourself when an inmate asks you to do something foolish, because that's part of the game the inmate plays too, because the inmate could do it in such a way where you feel you've done something wrong by just the inmate asking you, and you haven't, and which that winds up stopping people from reporting it, because then they wind up thinking, well, I must have done something to, you know, get that inmate's attention to do that to me, like to even ask me. Because you'll have some officers that have never been asked to do something dirty their whole career, and then you get some other officers who get asked every day, you know? So this is kind of geared towards the people who are doing the right thing, but maybe there's just something there that the inmates pick up on. And I think really it deals with your reaction on what happens once you get that information, once the inmate makes the request, and what are you doing to prevent it from happening to someone else. So Connie, what's your thoughts of when the inmate asked you to make that phone call and you found out, like, wow, this is something I shouldn't be doing? How did you look at yourself? Did you ask yourself, I wonder why out of all these people here, the inmate would want to ask me?
So I actually didn't. Actually, though, what I did think about is that, so in the role of a discharge planner, you're constantly helping. You know, you are trying to help them navigate all these different situations. And it wasn't that I hadn't called family members before. In the past, I would call a family member and try to see, can this person sleep on your couch for a couple of weeks until we get them into a program? You know, I'm trying to make sure like the homelessness issue is not an issue. So there's other reasons why I would call a family member. But in this instance, what kind of threw me off was him asking to talk to them himself, which I was like, what? Like, it's just not what we do. I would call, you tell me who you think you can stay, whose home you can stay at. I'll call them to see whether or not this is a possible option. And if not, I'll let you know what they say, but I've never actually given an inmate my phone. So in this instance, I didn't so much think, why me? I just thought that more so, this is an opportunity that has presented itself. So it raised my awareness that opportunities will always present themselves. You've just got to be on the top of your game. You've got to be prepared for when an inmate sees there's an opportunity. And then in that case, there was no officer standing at my door, which usually the officer's at the door because the office was a tight office. So the officer would have usually been outside the door. In this instance, his opportunity was the officer is not at the door. The officer is actually talking to the clinic officer right now. Let me seize the moment.
Yeah, I want to add on that. So you're right. So basically for him, it was opportunities. And we deal with inmates all the time that, you know, are impulsive and deal with, you know, great opportunity here, I'm going to jump on it. For some people, it could happen because inmate could be in a desperation mode and you happen to have access to certain things and they're aware of that and they may just take the chance to give it a shot. It could be the same situation with you where you had access to a phone that couldn't be traced. So now the situation itself puts the person into a situation, like the context, the environment puts Connie into a situation which could make her vulnerable, but again, Connie benefits by, talking to staff and peers, and it removes that level of vulnerability. So sometimes the situation itself can put you into something where you're vulnerable, but now you have to kind of figure out what to do. Most of the time, it's really just communicating and let people know. And if it's ambiguous, you ask, well, who do you go to? You go to your peers. Also, there could be a developed rapport. And if you don't understand where that helping ends, that's going to be a problem. So yes, an inmate could think that you helping them is personal and only to them. And you have to make it known, no, this is what I do for everyone. I'm objective. I'm fair. This isn't just for you. This is what I would offer to anyone on the compound. And, because again, that's within your prescribed role. But when you get to that point where the inmate feels that's personal to them and you're not giving them any hint that it's not towards them, that this is what part of your job is, they may start to try to push that envelope to see how far they can go. And that needs to be regulated really by the person well, I know what my end game is. I know what I'm allowed to do within my prescribed role. So the moment that inmate goes to push, I don't care if it's a fraction of an inch, you have to, take ownership of sorry, we're not going that far, and do whatever you can to make sure that inmate knows that what they asked for wasn't just a simple request. It was out of line, so that phone call, however simplistic the phone call could look on the surface, after you found out these end results, it's like you want to go back to the inmate and say, how dare you even ask me for that? So the request may have been simple until you knew what the consequences were. Then when the consequences came to back, that goes to show you the inmate didn't care, because I'll guarantee you that inmate knew what the consequences were. That's why they asked you, But real quick, before we come to closing, when the person told you what the consequences could have been, and the game that was being played, how did that make you view that particular inmate, and in general, obviously other inmates? But does it get you pissed a little bit?
I was upset. I was like, yo, why would he ask me that? Like, so here it is. I am a nice person and I am trying to help people. And here I've got this idiot trying to jeopardize me and I don't even know it, So, for me, it was very eye-opening that one, no matter how nice you are, if they've got an angle, they're going to work that angle. And really, you've got to do your due diligence to learn your environment. You didn't know anything about the phone. Should you have known? Clearly, you should have known, and not because I'm trying to do something devious, but I should have known because I should know what the environment really entails, what are truly all the consequences, so that I'm constantly making informed decisions. What I do appreciate, though, you mentioned ownership for the decision. And so I think it was good that I didn't know, because I said, no, you can't use the phone. That was my decision. It wasn't, you can't use the phone because custody said. It wasn't, you can't use the phone because it's not secured. It was, no, you can't use the phone. And so I think there was power in the fact that that decision was my decision to begin with. But I think the ownership is really a big thing, because then it doesn't undermine your authority as that person, because, and we talk many times about that perception of authority. And so the moment I give my authority away and say, oh no, well, custody said that you can't do it, is the moment that they're going to try another way to come at me because I haven't owned that decision.
Yeah, and we definitely covered that a lot when you come to the external justification versus the internal. It has to be internal. They have to know that it's you saying it. Hey, Connie, you have anything you want to say in closing?
I just want to say, listen, everybody, stay on your P's and Q's, right? Like, be aware and really just do your best to, manage these situations as they present themselves to you.
Yeah, guys, this was a great dialogue, something that me and Connie had discussed previously, but we didn't know each other's story, where we were going to go with it. But if you can see here, education. Do something that's reactive, yes, but how are you protecting other people? How are you protecting people that may be more vulnerable to that inmate's request? So there's a lot here that goes beyond the moment. Sure, you're good for today, but what have you done to stop the inmate from not just going to you again, but also going to someone else, and look at their approach. I don't care if they take it as a joke. Hey, I know you would never do this. Tell them how funny that knot is. I'm sorry. Make sure they know how funny that knot is. That doesn't make any sense. Wait, Connie.
Make sure they know how funny, how it's not funny, how unfunny. I don't know. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, there's a thought there, guys. I want you to know I'm going to keep that too. I'm not going to edit that. Let them know, because that's I don't know. I can't get it out. Let them know how funny that knot. Let them know how let them know how unfunny that is. No. It's
just
not
let
funny.
them know it's not funny.
Yeah, there you go. Oh no, as all CEOs would say, let them know it's not fucking funny. You know? But as always, guys, the show was Tier Talk. Just some more information. Hopefully, you guys take it, and don't forget to check out. We have the Tier Talk podcast. We also have Fly Behind the Wall. We also have Conversations with Connie, and don't forget, please check out Russ's community page on Facebook. Keep us a cast. A lot of good information on there being shared, and just it goes way beyond the information provided. We do our best to give people an understanding of what's being provided, and I think that's what's kind of everlasting. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. The bell is going to notify you every time I post a video. And I almost said we're going to go to our sponsors and get ready to do the show again. No, we're signing off. Take care, guys. Stay safe.